what's your name anyway?
Hey, kid, there's a big shot gangster. He's putting together a crew.
You think everything sounds like a bad idea.
If you come with me, you're in this life for good.
I waited a long time for a shot like this. I got a really good feeling about this.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you? I'm no one. There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
May the Force be with us.
My nerd world.
Just let it in.
Oh, Jabba. Why does she get a blaster and I don't? Oh, Jabba.
Well, hello there. Hey, it's Jon Justice, and welcome to my Nerd World. Episode number 123 of the Star Wars podcast. Damn it, Disney! Why'd you have to do the world premiere 2 weeks out before the rest of us get to go see Solo, the Star Wars story? It's not fair. We have lots to get to on the show today. Spoiler free, because I don't know anything. I've kept myself in the dark, and really, it's going to be... Well, I feel like I've made it through the hardest part so far in not finding out what happens in Solo, a Star Wars story. We do have the premiere at the Cannes Film Festival coming up later this week. Actually, not even later this week. I'm recording this on Sunday. This is happening on Tuesday. And that's when the embargo will be lifted on reviews. So, gonna have to avoid the reviews, but I've already avoided, apart from just the non-spoiler Twitter reaction, a bunch of which I'm going to share with you on the show today. I've already been able to avoid any spoilers so far. However, my interest and excitement, and I say this every single week for this movie, is absolutely through the roof. It's through the roof based off of the reaction, even some negative reaction. There's negative reaction from people that has me excited. And I know that sounds dumb, but you get to know a lot of these commentators just watching their shows enough, and you know what they like and what they don't like. And there's a couple of individuals in particular, actually one person in particular that I'll get into, who was disappointed with the movie, who is a big Star Wars fan. And I'm actually more excited now that that person is upset and disappointed by the movie than perhaps I would have been if they were happy with the movie. It sounds like it's going to be great. And it sounds like it's going to really strike at the heart in a good way of us hardcore Star Wars fans in a way that I was not expecting. So we will get into that. I'm going to share with you an article, lengthy piece from RottenTomatoes.com, Solo, a Star Wars story buzz. Basically, they broke it down into several different categories, and they grabbed a bunch of comments off Twitter that I'll share with you and do some commentary on. Then we'll dive into some other big news this week, including Jon Favreau reveals the timeline of his upcoming live-action TV series, which has me really excited, but also really curious as well. We'll get into that. Obi Wan Kenobi, movie in pre-production, filming scheduled for spring 2019. What is that going to end up being about? We'll give you comments on that. Has not been officially disclosed yet, although Ewan McGregor was at the red carpet premiere in Los Angeles on Thursday of Solo: A Star Wars Story. And then, of course, we're going to spend a lot of time with listener feedback this week. As always, you can email talkshownerd@gmail.com. You can also leave a comment on Twitter as well, at the My Nerd World, and on YouTube. So many of you guys comment on the YouTube page. You can always comment there too. So let's go ahead and we'll get right into it, and we'll let Luke Skywalker take us there.
This is not going to go the way you think.
I'm hearing a lot about Solo it does some fan service. There are some nods, and this is kind of what I've been extrapolating from comments without getting into spoilers. And so if you don't even want to know sort of surface level reference stuff without specifics, then I would avoid the show for the next probably 10 minutes or so. I do not know anything. I have no answers about what is revealed in the movie. I do have questions, and I know that there are some big things that apparently happen in the movie that people are saying, wait, don't spoil yourself, because they've kept some stuff secret. I have my own speculation, some of which I may not even share because, well, we'll get to that part. So I am going to run through the Twitter comments that Rotten Tomatoes put together on this movie. So again, this is all just, none of this is spoilers. I don't know what happens in the movie. I don't know any of the big reveals, but I may be talking about what I think happens, or at least throwing out questions on particular characters. So that serves as your warning. All right. So that being said, based off some commentary that I've seen, apparently there are some nods to the prequels in this movie. I have my guesses, and we'll get to that. But even beyond that, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if this means, and please do not, if you've read what happens, I beg you, please do not post anything up on YouTube. Do not send me anything. I go to the Reddit Star Wars leaks page a lot, along with the speculation page. And thankfully, they've been able to keep the threads where the spoilers are revealed under wraps. But I've basically just been skimming the headlines just to find out if there's anything non-spoiler that I want to cover, because I've got to keep myself in the dark for the next 2 weeks. I've really changed my attitude when it comes to spoilers. I spoiled myself to death in The Force Awakens. I do not regret doing that, but I was really glad that I didn't for The Last Jedi. And based off of what people are saying about Solo, I'm going to keep myself in the dark about Solo as well. But there are a lot of questions. Who is Enfys Nest? We know it's a female, and I was listening to the Steele Saunders, the Steelers podcast, and he had his wife on. They went to the premiere. They were talking about the movie, and she started to go down the road of that character, and he stopped her. And I am at a loss to who that character could be, being a female and then related to potentially the prequels. I honestly am clueless who that character could possibly be. So let's go ahead and dive into this. Again, this article from Rotten Tomatoes. They break it down based off of the reaction from the movie, and they start off here. It takes a while to find its groove. Many people were saying things like Jenna Bush from Legion of Leia says, has a bit of a rough start, but it was a blast of an adventure. Anthony Bresnikan from Entertainment Weekly, like The Falcon, a few rough edges getting there, but I thought Ron Howard pulled it off as neatly as a Wookiee removes arms. Mike Ryan of Uprocks says, the first act of Solo: A Star Wars Story can be hit and miss clunky, but once Donald Glover's Lando shows up, who is legit fantastic, and the Kessel Run heist plot kicks in, it's a whole lot of fun. Kate Urbaland of IndieWire said, once it kicks in into its, hey, let's make a crew, yes, also do a heist stuff, it totally flies. You know, and again, you've got to take all these comments with a huge grain of salt, because we as Star Wars fans are so critical. We're so overly critical of these movies. And they are under such an intense microscope. I don't remember walking out of Infinity War, because that's just, again, top of mind, and thinking in comments of, oh, it took too long here, or it slogged in the middle. I just kind of walk away with a general sense of, I either liked it or I didn't like it. And I don't go back and look at old movies and do that. Or old Star Wars movies. It's not like I go back and watch A New Hope and go, well, it takes a little while to get going in the beginning, especially when R2 and 3PO end up on Tatooine. So again, we're in this environment, in this world now of having opinions everywhere, and you've got to put, at least in my opinion, you got to put the right lens on when you're reading these. Accepting Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo also takes time, according to the article from Rotten Tomatoes. It does take a bit of time to get used to Alden as Han, but after 30 minutes or so, your brain adjusts, says Mike Ryan. It takes a bit for it to find its feet, and for Alden Ehrenreich to turn on enough charm to make you forget he's not Harrison Ford. That is, again, Kate Erbland from IndieWire. Look, my opinion has always been going into this movie that Han Solo is a character that is bigger than one actor. That's just that's my opinion. He is like a Batman or like a Joker or like any, you look at like an Iron Man and you kind of go, well, I have a hard time imagining anybody but, Robert Downey Jr. playing Iron Man. Well, one day that's going to happen. And that character existed long before, Robert Downey Jr. Put on that suit. Now, obviously, Han Solo was different because he got his start in the original Star Wars movie, A New Hope, and Harrison Ford played him. But if you look at Harrison Ford in The Force Awakens, he's different than he was. He's dramatically different than he was in Return of the Jedi. Same character, but in terms of appearance, he looks incredibly different. I mean, he's aged some 30-odd years. Carrie Fisher, same thing. You look at Carrie Fisher in Return of the Jedi and compare her to how she looks in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. She does. She looks completely different. And that's part of the reason why I'm totally fine if they decide to recast Leia. I don't have, personally, any issue. I understand that people's nostalgia keeps them from accepting that fact. They feel like those actors are, so entwined with that character that nobody, it's so precious to them. That's never been my attitude. These are characters. And the fact that Carrie Fisher has said time and time again that, she's just, look, Mark Hamill made that comment, has made the comment that he just borrows that character to play that role. And so one day they will cast a different Luke Skywalker, and we'll all have to decide whether or not we like that particular actor. But there is going to be that segment of the fandom that'll never accept that because they feel like these characters can only be played by these individuals. That's never been my attitude. And I also have said from the get-go that I think there's a big chance that Alden Ehrenreich could actually portray Han Solo better than Harrison Ford did. There's no reason why that can't be the case. He's an individual whose lines and story was written by somebody else. It wasn't like Harrison Ford wrote those lines or Alden Ehrenreich wrote those lines. And it seems like, based off of people's comments, such as, Alden Ehrenreich is a great Han Solo. Alden Ehrenreich doesn't remind me of Harrison Ford. That was Michelle Buckman of The Nerdist said that. Stephen Frosty Weintraub of Collider said Alden Ehrenreich was perfectly cast as Han Solo. Alden Ehrenreich doesn't remind me of Harrison Ford. He reminds me of Jack Nicholson if he's been cast as the smuggler in the original Star Wars. Wise ass, easily scared, bigger heart than he'd like. That's according to Anthony Bresnikan of Entertainment Weekly. I was concerned about Alden Ehrenreich's portrayal of Han Solo, but not because he was portraying Han Solo, but just because I don't know him as an actor. And those original trailers they showed seemed a bit clunky because they weren't showing a lot of his acting prowess, and they certainly have done that in these further clips. A little bit later on in this week's show, I actually have about a 9-minute interview that Alden Ehrenreich did with Jimmy Kimmel on his show that I'll be sharing on this show today. Donald Glover is perfect as Lando. I think that goes without saying. Michelle Buckman, Donald Glover is charming. Times 1,000. Yes, Donald Glover steals the movie, but you already knew that. That's Jenna Bush from Legion of Leia. I haven't heard anybody complain about Donald Glover's portrayal of Lando. And look, that's not surprising, but also Lando was a very unique character as well. It's interesting. I guess what I'm trying to say and why I kind of stopped down was it surprises me that there was so much concern about Alden Ehrenreich playing Harrison Ford, but there was less concern about Donald Glover playing Lando. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're way more familiar with Donald Glover and his work. I mean, the dude, much like Oscar Isaac, just oozes confidence, right, and charisma. So it wasn't coming as a big surprise, or people weren't as concerned. We didn't know as much about Alden Ehrenreich, and I think after this movie, we're gonna know a lot more about Alden Ehrenreich. Let's see. The rest of the cast is out of this world. Getting back to the article, Tandy Newton is who I want to be when I grow up, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge's L3. Well, we'll talk about that later, said Angie Hahn. A lot of people talking about Jonas Suotomo as Chewbacca, who I guess does a fantastic job as Chewbacca. I've heard that from a number of different comments from people. Let's see. Not everybody totally loves it. Eric Eisenberg from Cinema Blend said this: Solo, a Star Wars story, is fine, definitely fun, has the occasional prequel problem, answering questions I didn't need answers to, but also has some fun references. Overall, I liked it, but didn't love it. I'm good with that, by the way. I am not one of these individuals that is going to get down on finding out the backstory of things that were said in other movies. Christian Harloff from Collider and Jedi Council was the individual that I was talking about at the top of the show. He was disappointed by this movie. He's also a person that is constantly groaning on about making the Star Wars universe too small and inviting characters in that we've seen before and shrinking the galaxy. So my guess, based off of that, is that there's going to be some really interesting references that are going to be nods to the fandom. That gets me excited. Christian Harloff is the guy that, again, he's disappointed, and that makes me happy. Because I know what he doesn't want. He doesn't want them to do that. I think that he would be upset if a Boba Fett showed up. And I think he would be upset if that Boba Fett, for example, was played by either Daniel Logan, who played the younger Boba Fett, or if he was played by Tamura Morrison, who played Jango Fett. To me, that would be rad. I'm bringing that word back. Rad. I would be so excited to see Boba Fett and have him take the helmet off and have it be either Daniel Logan, because he's older now, or have it be Tamura Morrison. That, to me, would be so damn epic. I would absolutely love it. Both of those make sense. I think it makes more sense to have Tamura Morrison playing Boba Fett, because his son in Attack of the Clones was supposed to be a direct clone of him. So they got Daniel Logan, right, who was a younger version. You could sort of mentally extrapolate that, okay, when he gets older, he'll look like his dad. So if they got Daniel Logan, I'd be fine with that too. They used that character really, really well in Rebels. But I think in terms of consistency and continuity, if Boba Fett showed up and it turns out that it was Tamura Morrison, which would make sense, that would be awesome. And I've heard some people make comments about, hey, we wonder where the franchise is going. I could see where, again, going back to Negative Nancy Christian Harloff, which I'll talk about here again in a second, where I could see how some fans of Star Wars would be frustrated if they went and did that, because that would mean if they made a Boba Fett movie, they would be emboldened to use him again as that character, and they wouldn't want to see that. For me, I think it would be an amazing nod to the prequels. Just one quick comment on that, by the way. A lot of you, when you write into the show, you talk about how much you appreciate the positivity of the show, and I really, really appreciate that. And I understand your frustration. I am fine with people, and I'm just going to keep beating this drum. I'm fine with people who don't like a Star Wars movie, right? If you don't like Solo, I haven't seen it yet, but if you don't like Solo, okay. You don't like The Last Jedi, okay. I'm cool with that. What I get annoyed by is the constant hammering of all the reasons why. And then they should have done this. And if they had done that, it would have been better. And why did they do this? And it was a bad choice to do that. I get tired of hearing it. And I'm done. I used to listen to Collider Jedi Council every week. I'm kind of done with listening to it because I know that the people on the show are entitled to their opinions, and I don't want to take that away. But for me as a listener, I'm just tired of the negativity. And I'm sick, to be honest, I'm sick of hearing Christian Harloff pitch a fit about all the different choices that they made that were wrong. I mean, we watch these shows, and he kind of just beats the dead horse over these issues over and over and over again. So when I saw that he was disappointed with Solo, I kind of went, that's not surprising. And then I got excited because I know all the things that Christian Harloff doesn't like about this series. And I go, hey, or at least what he doesn't like about the current movies, The Last Jedi. He complains about The Last Jedi humor. That's the one that really gets to me. He pitches a fit. It's Marvel humor, and I don't want to go down that road. It's just personal choice. I'm just done listening to that because I'm tired of it. So, again, if he doesn't like it, I think that we're in for a treat. All right. Now, back to more positivity. Yet, overall, it's a lot of fun. A few more comments here. Let's see. Jermaine Lussier of IO9 said, Solo, a Star Wars story, is a GD delight. It's a nonstop adventure packed with way more emotion than you're expecting. You'll have a smile on your face the whole time and leave eager for more. Let's see. Michelle Buckman says, I love Solo, a Star Wars story so much. It's a Western, a caper, funny with so much heart. It's got so many surprises that fans are going to love. Favorite new Star Wars movie? Carol Warner, People Magazine. Fans, you're in for a friggin' treat with Solo. Killer cast, great adventure, so much fun. What I like about this, too, is that these seem like they're fringe individuals and not people that are sort of as deeply entrenched into the fandom as, say, you and I are. That gets me excited, too, because I tend to believe that those of us who love The Last Jedi, and I'm going to venture a guess that most of you listening to the show do, because it seems to kind of fall into that, into that category. I think if you didn't love The Last Jedi, you probably have been annoyed by the show a long time ago and stopped listening. But, for those of us that love The Last Jedi, when it comes to the general fandom at large, if the general fandom at large is loving this movie, then I'm going to venture a guess that you and I are probably going to love this movie. Simon Thompson, IGN. A movie for fans, and only those totally fresh to the Star Wars, franchise. Heart, humor, and a falcon full of top-notch action. From a worry to a favorite, very, very happy. Rachel Heine of Nerdist said, pleasantly surprised by Solo, a cute, funny, stylish Star Wars adventure. Would absolutely watch more Han and Chewie. Let's see. Stephen Frosty Weintraub again says, film was a blast and a welcome addition to the Star Wars franchise. Ron Howard, you did a great job. Congrats. And then one more here. Fun. I was pleasantly surprised. Charming cast. Fun action. Good jokes. Good fan service, but still does its own thing. See, I don't know, man. This movie seems to be poised to hit more buttons than I expected it was going to, and I'll get to that in a moment. There's kind of a spoiler coming up, only because, again, I've been able to extrapolate a bit, and even this actually comes from Powell, who wrote the soundtrack, this particular spoiler. So I'm going to hold on before I go and do that. I'm going to put spoiler here in case you don't want to be. It's basically a story note, a story beat that I think most of you kind of assumed was happening anyways. So I'm just going to put spoiler here before I write it. Okay, here we go. A couple more points from the Rotten Tomatoes article. There's some great action and the effects are remarkable. Rob Keyes, a Screen Rant, said the most real looking film in the franchise, and the best blaster action scenes and vehicle chases. Another thing great about Solo, this is again Stephen Weintraub, a Star Wars story that really stood out are the action set pieces. They were great and so well choreographed. Also from Terry Schwartz of IGN, talks about the creature design, droids, new aliens, everything in between. Looks amazing, feeling like they belong in the original trilogy. seems to lean much more on practical effects than any notable obtrusive CGI. I think the CGI has just gotten so good that we can't tell the difference anymore. I couldn't tell you what was CGI and what wasn't in the Canto Bight sequence on in The Last Jedi, and I know there was quite a bit of CGI in that. And then Mike Ryan of Uprocks says, this is for sure now the Solo franchise. It's not really hiding the fact that it's setting up for more Solo movies. All right, so before we move on to some of the other news this week, here's some speculation, and I'm going to go over a little bit of ground that I went over just a moment ago. But speculation, surprises that might be and will most likely be prequel based. That probably has me excited the most. I won't be disappointed if they're in there. But a guy that I follow on Twitter, Jeremy Conrad, who's got a blog, has been around for quite a long time. He's one of the few individuals that I keep my notifications on for because I usually dig his opinion, and he's really quick to break news before anybody else is, especially just in the Twitter sphere. He put out a tweet, and this is all falling into the spoiler category. Again, no details, but just letting you know. He put out a tweet saying that those that thought that Disney was going to be distancing themselves from the prequels are going to be disappointed in a few weeks. And that gets me really excited. I want to see more nods to the prequels. I want to see nods to the prequels in Episode 9. I do love those movies. And isn't it funny in the fandom of all these idiots that want to make these videos about how Disney is ruining Star Wars and the social justice warrior nonsense, which is so stupid. By the way, those people don't even understand what that means. I keep seeing, and that's on both sides of the spectrum, right? Regardless of where you land politically, when it comes to SJW, social justice warrior stuff, okay? I don't think that either side that either think they're doing it or people that argue against it really understand what that means. I think of more what they're talking about for those that are doing the boycotts of the series. It's more of political correctness than it is anything else. I don't even they throw out the social justice warrior label, and I don't think it even really applies to their arguments, but their arguments are pretty dumb anyhow. Anyways, so to that, it makes me laugh, though, because there's so many people out there that talk about how Disney has ruined its franchise, we're going to boycott Solo, hated The Last Jedi, but weren't these the same people that were pitching a fit over the George Lucas-directed prequels? That's more of a society issue. That's more of the prequels came out at a time when the internet was beginning to grow, and we had the MySpace, and people were putting their opinions out there, sort of later in the series, right? When you get into Revenge of the Sith. But we did have internet, and people were talking on message boards, and they were able to put out their opinions in ways that they couldn't during the original trilogy. So I think what you saw back in the prequels was sort of the beginnings of an internet minority-based group of people pitching a fit that probably already existed, that always already existed, but didn't have a platform of which to present their opinions. You saw it a little bit during the prequels, and now we see it a lot during the sequel trilogy and the spin-off movies. But make no mistake, there were people that were complaining then, and there are probably a lot of individuals that have grown up and now are complaining about this, that are never going to love any Star Wars beyond the original trilogy. But they are in the minority. But I enjoy the prequels, and any new movies that can come out that can reference those movies, that can tie all these together, to me, makes those older films, or I'm sorry, not older, but those prequel movies even better. Okay, more speculation on Solo. This is the big sort of spoiler, doing that thing with my fingers, but it's more just of a note. It does seem that there is a romance between Kira, Emilia Clarke's character, and Han Solo in this movie. Even the guy that wrote the score, is it Jonathan Powell? If I'm getting that wrong, I know his last name is Powell. He even put out on Facebook that there was a theme that alluded to a romance between those two characters. I want that. And I know there's a big segment of the... let me back up. I know there's a segment of the fandom that doesn't want that. There's a segment of the fandom going, Leia was Han's only love. Give me a freaking break. How old was Han Solo in A New Hope, right? In his 30s? You mean to tell me that the dude went all the way into his 30s and never loved another woman before that? We already know that's not true from some of the books. I mean, that's your headcanon messing with you. I want you, and look, you can't have the Han and Leia romance, in my opinion, even work if Han is that relationship immature that he hasn't been in love with another woman before. That makes no sense to me. I love this idea that he could potentially have a romance with Kira in this movie that ends up not working out, that ends up putting him on the path to the cynical Han Solo that we see in A New Hope. I think that would be, I want to see that. I think that's what her purpose in the film is going to end up being. And this goes back to the Christian Harloff again from Collider, because he's one of the individuals that said that he didn't want to see that a long time ago. I've heard that on other shows. So, which, again, makes me happy that he's disappointed. Okay. I am also hearing it's character-centric, but with good action. On the Steel Wars podcast, Steele's wife had made a comment that it was like watching a reality show. She just wanted to watch these characters in this environment. And, you know, to her, the action scenes were separate, although Steele was quick to chime in that there's no big sort of space battle, but there's a lot of good space scenes and action sequences. The other thing, and we'll end our solo discussion on this, I've heard from a number of different people that went to the premiere that this movie has a big rewatchability factor. And that, to me, is probably one of the biggest compliments you could give a movie, in saying that it's got that rewatchability factor. I know that one of the Making Star Wars dudes made a comment that it's a movie that he'll just throw on if he wants to watch a Star Wars movie, because doesn't have the heavy mythology that we know it's not going to have. It doesn't have Jedis, or doesn't require you to kind of get into it to enjoy it. You can just kind of put it on in the background. So again, that just the fact that people are saying that it's got that rewatchability factor has me really, really excited. I think it's going to be great. I never, ever anticipated that I would be this excited for this movie. I really didn't. And maybe I'm doing myself a disservice because I was trying to keep my expectations of what Lawrence Kasdan was going to write, because he's admitted that he's not as deeply entrenched into the lore as probably maybe even like you and I are. I think the difference comes in, and those references come in because of his son, Jon Kasdan, who helped him write the movie. I'm going to guess that if we get a lot of connections to other films, especially the prequels, that more than likely has to do with the writing of Jon Kasdan more than the writing of Lawrence Kasdan.
There has been an awakening. Have you felt it?
I have, and apparently it's Jon Favreau revealing the timeline of the upcoming live-action Star Wars TV series. Also, the director revealed that he has already written 4 episodes of the show. So the story goes like this. The live-action Star Wars television series is still in development, but it seems executive producer Jon Favreau is already 4 episodes into writing the program, presumed to anchor Disney's upcoming streaming service. Now, it's not in the story. I believe that he said it was still a couple of years out. If I'm not mistaken, the live-action TV series is supposed to drop next... I'm sorry, not the live-action TV series. The app is supposed to start next year. My guess is we'll probably get the live-action TV series after Episode 9. I don't think they're going to want to put that out next year. So I would think probably in the first quarter of 2020, we'll get the first season of the live-action TV series. While speaking at the premiere of Solo: A Star Wars Story on Thursday night, the director revealed several details about his upcoming Star Wars series, including the setting 3 years after Return of the Jedi, and his deep dive into scripting before he had the job. He said, "I wrote 4 episodes to show them what the show would be. He explained to Nerdist on the red carpet. It's all new characters, different planets, but still fits into the timeline. So that timeline is between Return of the Jedi and Star Wars The Force Awakens. Will also be the focus of Resistance, the new animated Star Wars Rebels executive-produced series, centering on a young Resistant pilot, Kazuda Giono. The series will occur closer to the sequel trilogy, with The Force Awakens stars Oscar Isaac, Gwendolyn Christie, set to reprise their roles as Poe Dameron and Captain Phasma. All right, so 3 years after Return of the Jedi, all new characters, different planets. Okay, this actually gives us not just information relevant to the live-action TV show, but it also gives us a bit of something we can point to when it comes to the other movies in development. So, what do we know? Well, we know the Empire has fallen and are retreating or have retreated into the unknown regions. The rebellion would, conceivably be broken up. So, you've got this interesting limbo state happening. New characters, different planets. I imagine we're going to be seeing something of, individuals from the rebellion who have now gone off to find another life, because we don't have a First Order threat yet. So there has to be another threat that's out there, whether it's remaining Empire, whether it's individuals pushing to have the First Order, as the First Order is being built. Probably going to have some characters that we know and love pop in and out. I think you have potential here to get a Luke Skywalker or to get a Han Solo, right? In this TV series. But the timeline, I'm really, really excited about. Anything set between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, I think, is territory that I really want to see. Again, you have no Empire, but you have no First Order either, so you have the potential to bring in a different type of threat. In terms of aesthetics, you got you have older vehicles, ships, and technology, but that we're blending into the sequel trilogy, so I really like the potential of what we have here, and the fact that we're not doing another movie based off the time of the Empire set between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. So what can this mean for the other films? Well, for the Game of Thrones guys, I'm still going with they're going back and doing Old Republic stuff. I'm still convinced they're going back and doing the old timeline. Somebody is going to. If it's not the Game of Thrones guys, then it's definitely going to be Rian Johnson, right? Because you've got the live-action TV show and now the cartoon that are set between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. I just don't see another trilogy happening also in that particular timeline. So my guess of the Game of Thrones guys is basically just based off of Game of Thrones, and Old Republic seems as closely aligned with Game of Thrones as you can get in the Star Wars universe. But, we all kind of speculated, too, that Rian Johnson would be going back and handling sort of the origins of the Force because of what he did in The Last Jedi. So I still think that's possible. I think the other possibility, if we assume for a moment that the Game of Thrones guys are going to be going back and doing Old Republic, I think that it's Rian Johnson could actually be jumping ahead. And that we could actually see a trilogy from Rian Johnson that is based after Episode 9. I think that's a big probability. I guess my larger point is I don't think the Game of Thrones series of movies or the Rian Johnson series of movies are going to be based anywhere in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, or between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. I think that ground's been covered. We're either going way forward in time or we're going way backwards in time.
I've seen this raw strength only once before. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now.
All right, the other big news item to drop before we get to listener feedback is Obi Wan Kenobi movie and pre-production filming scheduled for spring 2019. This comes from Fantha Tracks. which is a combination of a couple of guys from different websites that have quite a bit of credibility, so maybe new to individuals, but these are people who have broke big stories before. This is what they had to say on Fanthetrax. The project is sufficiently along in that an art department is now in full pre-production mode at Pinewood Studios, with ancillary work being carried out at Industrial Light and Magic in London. A number of concept artists, prop modelers, and storyboard artists are working as a team across the 2 locations on the film. The group growing in numbers every month. Contracts have also been extended to a number of the crew who have worked on various Star Wars films produced at Pinewood under the Disney era to join production when their work on Episode 9 ends. This will see the Obi-Wan crew grow gradually over the remainder of next year, primarily from October onwards. Pre-production will continue at Pinewood whilst Episode 9 shoots from this summer through the end of the year, at which point production of the Obi-Wan movie has been scheduled to move onto the stages in mid-January 2019, with the main shoot to begin in April of 2019. The project is being developed under the corporate name of PLT Productions, scheduled for release in December of 2020. The documents do not reveal any casting details, but keep your eye on Fanthetrax for more information. The news comes 5 years to the day that Lucasfilm announced production of Episode 7, The Force Awakens, that would take place at the same location in Pinewood Studios. All right, here's my guess about the Obi Wan Kenobi movie. Based off the age of Ewan, it's going to take place, obviously, after Revenge of the Sith. My guess is that it will be within a handful of years, 5 to 7, maybe, of Revenge of the Sith. I think it makes it easier for Obi Wan Kenobi to be watching over a young Luke Skywalker if Luke Skywalker is still a baby or a toddler, right? You go to the line from A New Hope, I'm getting too old for this sort of thing. And without getting too far down the road of like what the story could possibly be, obviously, I guess in my opinion, Obi-Wan Kenobi would be called upon to go and assist with somebody. Just like he was going to be called upon in Rogue One, right? They were using Leia to go get Obi-Wan. I think we're going to find out that's not the first time that that's happened. And that will have to bring Obi-Wan Kenobi off of Tatooine to go on this adventure. And it just seems like it's easier for that to happen if you've got Luke Skywalker as being a baby or a toddler, and people aren't necessarily looking for him, and you don't have to worry about him getting himself into trouble if Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru are spending an abundance of time still tending to him. Look, and this is one of those things where I am more excited at the initial thought of an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie than I was at the initial thought of a Han Solo movie. And based off of how hyped I am now about a Han Solo movie, I can only imagine how I'm going to feel about an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie once we actually have some details of what this movie is going to end up entailing. And again, going back to my commentary on the prequels, I love the idea of getting a movie based on Obi-Wan Kenobi with Ewan McGregor in that role, because again, it just, to me, enhances the enjoyment of watching the prequel trilogy to be able to see Ewan McGregor portray Obi-Wan Kenobi on the big screen again. The idea really, really is enticing to me.
My Nerd World.
And welcome back to the show. And this is actually a few days from when the first part of the show was recorded on Sunday. I had some teeth work done. I had 2 root canals done last week, and they ended up causing me some complications over the weekend after I had recorded the show on Sunday. And yesterday, I just didn't have a chance to get the show wrapped up, which is why I had to wait until today to finish up the show. Because of that, I'm going to make some changes to what I said was going to happen on the show this week. I still have the Alden Ehrenreich interview with Jimmy Kimmel that I'll share with you here in a moment, but I am going to hold off on the listener feedback portion that I had planned for this week's show, and I'm going to save it for the next show, which will be the last show before Solo debuts in theaters next week. with that, I'm going to present to you, coming up here after this interview with Alden Ehrenreich, a request for some of your feedback. And I'll let you know what it is I'm looking for, and hopefully we can have a good Solo, a Star Wars story build-up, one final show before, again, we all have a chance to go and see the movie, before we have a chance to read any of the reviews. The review embargo gets lifted today. So as soon as the interview wraps up, I'll close the show out and ask you a couple questions and solicit your listener response. But first, I did promise, and I have it here. This is, again, Alden Ehrenreich plays Han Solo in Solo, a Star Wars Story on the Jimmy Kimmel Show.
Must have known you'd see me again.
Counting on it. Just didn't plan on it being so soon. Of course, now you've got a problem.
Big problem. You happen to notice that freighter down there? You know what's on it? About 30 hired guns. All I gotta do is give them the signal, you're surrounded.
Do your thing.
Solo opens May 25th. Please welcome Alden Ehrenreich.
To be here.
Been seeing your face on billboards all over town.
Yeah, it's around now. Yeah.
Are people recognizing you from the billboards or the trailers or whatever?
Yeah. You know, I've been recognized in the past a little bit. This one feels a little bit
this is going to be...
Yeah.
Things are going to change a lot.
I was going into an elevator, and there was it opened, and I was like, is this going down? And the guy was like, no, it's going up. Holy and so that's sort of a different vibe that I've experienced before.
You're not used to that.
Although maybe something else happened.
Yeah. It's possible, You're going to have to take the stairs from now on. It's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a coveted role. Han Solo is a big deal. I saw you made a very fine Han Solo, I will say.
Thank you.
I was curious about this. When you're taking on a role like this, is it like when they vet the Secretary of State, is there an intensive background search that goes on to make sure you didn't do anything terrible?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure there's something like that.
They didn't tell you they did a background search.
I'm not aware of it, no. So maybe this is where I'm finding out.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Be a little bit late. Did you have a summit with Harrison Ford? Did you guys have to sit down and agree?
A little bit. Well, no, but we were about to start shooting, and I felt like, it didn't feel right to sort of do it without meeting him. So I went out and I had lunch with. Well, originally it was going to be me and the directors and the head of the studio and stuff, and then the scheduling, it was just me. So I met him in his airplane hangar with 5 airplanes surrounding us. And then we went out to lunch, and he was awesome.
Did you fly to lunch, or did
No.
No. Did he share any wisdom with you?
He said, if anyone asks, tell him I told you everything you need to know, and that you're not allowed to say anything.
I see.
Which was good.
I get the sense, and Harrison has been here on a number of occasions, I feel like he's less interested in Star Wars than anyone I know.
Yeah, maybe. That might be true, He was kind of like, he's like, wait, what is it he's directing? What is this going on? He barely knew, that it was
probably thought you were
happening.
Indiana Jones or something. He didn't know what the hell was going on.
But he still doesn't like the Ewoks. I think that's a big thing for him.
He hates the Ewoks?
He hates Ewoks.
A lot of people hate the Ewoks.
It's like F.A.O. Schwartz. He was kind of, he didn't like it.
Well, wait till he finds out about the Porgs. He's going to really...
He might not know. I don't know if you've seen the one.
Guaranteed he doesn't know.
Right.
There's not a chance he knows about the Porgs.
Right.
I asked this question, I asked Woody Harrelson, who's quite a bit older than you are. I asked him last night what the first Star Wars movie he saw in a theater was. It was the first Star Wars movie. Which one for you?
Well, for me, so I was about 10, and I went to go see Episode 1. And
which was, to me, Episode 4, I guess, even though it was Episode 1.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And I sort of thought I was going to a premiere because I didn't know what a screening was, but it was a screening, an early screening of the movie.
Oh.
So I brought an autograph book.
Really?
And I thought it was going to be this star-studded event, which it wasn't. There was no one there except Shaquille O'Neal.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Which was pretty crazy. So I went up to him, and I was waiting to talk to him, and all these kids came over, and they were like, give me paper from your autograph book. So I gave it to him. And then he kind of got swarmed by all these kids. And then he left and took my pen.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, wow.
So actually, while I'm here, I thought maybe it's a good chance
You didn't sit
to
behind
say,
Shaq
no,
during the
thank God,
thing.
no, no.
Yeah, Shaq owes you a pen.
He owes me a pen. Yeah, it was a gel pen.
It was a gel
pen.
pen.
It was silver. It was a big deal. So I hope he's watching.
I hope so, too, yeah.
I'm just using crayons for like 15 years.
You should invite him to the premiere, as long as he's not sitting in front of you, of course.
Right,
but
yeah.
Who will you take to the premiere with you?
I've got 7 nieces and nephews who are all coming, which
Nice.
is very exciting. I've got my Nana, who's a big fan of me, doesn't really care about Star Wars.
Oh, she doesn't?
She calls it Star Trek, and she can't remember Chewie's name. She says, like, oh, that big hairy, what's the Bigfoot guy or the bear or something? But yeah, she's very excited. She has like a little stool in the bathroom that has like every magazine that I've ever been in
really?
next to the toilet. So if you're bored,
She just flips through and looks at her grandson.
Exactly. And if you're sitting on the toilet and looking at my face a lot, maybe when you see me in person, it might be a little weird.
With the secrecy aspect of this, can you tell your family that you're going to be a part of this?
Well, officially no, but I did.
That's what
Don't
everybody
tell
does.
Anybody,
yeah, everybody tells anyway.
Well, you have to tell your family.
Yeah, I guess so.
So I told her, and you're scared that it's going to get out or that you leak it and get in trouble or something.
Yeah.
So I was very clear with my Nana about don't tell anyone that this is happening. And then I called her a week later, and she was like, my friends are so excited. Everybody can't wait. And I was like, Nana, you can't. And she was like, well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I guess you can't really sue Nana, can you?
No, I'm trying. But
there's a scene in the movie, and I hope I don't get penalized for mentioning this, but there's a scene in the movie where you speak Wookiee with Chewbacca.
Yes. Yes.
Is that like, have they worked out like with Klingon, like they came up with a whole language, or is it just you making grunting noises?
Well, a little of both. We had to figure out, there's a part where it's subtitled, so we had to figure out what words meant certain words.
I see.
But it was in my audition, I had to learn it and sort of do the whole thing, and then...
Did they do that to humiliate you?
Yeah,
or?
just to see if you can deal with how embarrassed you can feel, and that's,
I wonder if it did come down to like, they're like, well, you know, Alden, his Wookiee was really, really good. He's very fluent.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah. But we ended up doing a lot of it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Who do you do it like with?
Well, Jonas, who plays Chewie, has been doing it for 3 movies. So he taught me kind of... I can do like the, like that kind of thing. But Jonas has different deep-cut Chewie stuff, like Chewie's laugh, which is like... and... all these kind of Chewie things I didn't. Shriwook is the name of the language.
Shriwook.
Shriwook.
So is he's doing that live with you then?
He does that live, and then they take like the sound of a bear and a seal and a lion or something and combine it in post.
And does he memorize his noises, or is he like, does he go over the script and like, oh yeah,
yeah. Like, he would make that joke sometimes because we'd be in the cockpit, and sometimes I have to say stuff that I name like 16 different buttons in one planet and a gun and a thing, and I'm like learning the lines, and then I'd turn to him and he'd be like, I think. Then I say, and he'd sort of screw with me.
That's good. I'm going to ask you for a favor. This is similar to something we did when the cast of The Avengers was here a couple of weeks ago, and we donated all the money. We're donating all the money to charity, and we got a lot of money for this. So I had them draw pictures of themselves, of their characters, and sign them. And what I'd like to ask you to do, since you are now Han Solo, is to is to sign that Solo cup. Maybe write Han on it or something like that. And then you can go to CharityBuzz.com starting tomorrow. That's the pen Shaq stole from you.
Right.
And you can bid on a Solo cup signed by the actual Han Solo himself. This could go for $1 million. Right there. Right. So there you go. Well, thank you, Alden. It's Alden. Congratulations on being in this movie. Alden Ehrenreich, everybody. Solo, A Star Wars Story opens May 25th.
My
Hi, I'm Jimmy Kimmel.
Nerd
An evil
World.
wizard has trapped me inside
And we'll
this
just
YouTube
cut off Jimmy Kimmel right there. All right, so again, abbreviated show this week, and my apologies for getting it out so late, but unfortunately, I was in a lot of pain yesterday, and you would not have wanted me to be doing the show. And I wanted to make sure I got the show out, and I'm limited on time. So, listener feedback that I was going to have on the show this week, we're going to hold off until the next episode. And between now and then, if you have remained, and I can't stress this enough, only if you've remained spoiler-free. If you don't know what happens in Solo: A Star Wars Story, because I don't know what happens in Solo: A Star Wars Story, apart from what I've shared with you in the earlier part of the show, drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com. Leave a comment on YouTube. You can also, again, hit me up on Twitter as well, @MyNerdWorld. And what are your expectations? What are you hoping to get out of Solo? What is something that would really make this movie for you beyond it just being a good film? What do you want to see from Solo? What are you expecting from Solo? How looking forward to the film are you? Again, send me a message between now and this Saturday. And for the final episode before, again, the debut of Solo: A Star Wars Story, we'll do basically focused on listener feedback, because I'm going to be avoiding most of the news sites between now and then. I imagine that between now and next Thursday, Disney and Lucasfilm are going to be focusing solely on Solo: A Star Wars Story. So again, talkshownerd@gmail.com. Leave a comment on YouTube. Thanks so much for checking the show out this week. Sorry I got it out late, but next week's show should be out at least by Sunday, if not earlier, and it'll be a listener reaction intensive show. So have yourself a great week. Can't wait to again talk to you guys again this coming week, and can't wait for Solo: A Star Wars Story.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.